The smallest puppy ever seen was too small to survive. Barely the size of a human hand, he wasn't expected to live through the night. But when a determined vet refused to give up, what she uncovered went far beyond saving a life. Every moment was a fight against time, until a chilling discovery revealed this tiny pup was at the heart of something much darker. In a town where speaking out could get you hurt, one choice would mean risking everything, including her own safety. What could be so dangerous about saving a single puppy, and why would someone be willing to destroy her to stop it? Your comments and presence here remind me why I tell these stories. If you still believe in the healing strength of love, truth, and quiet courage, then you're the reason this channel exists. The morning frost painted delicate patterns on the clinic windows as Dr. Callista Monroe finished checking on her overnight patients. Her breath formed tiny clouds in the chilly Montana air as she made notes on each chart. The familiar sounds and smells of the veterinary clinic, antiseptic, fresh hay, and the gentle whimpers of recovering animals, wrapped around her like a comfortable blanket. The loud bang of the front door shattering her peaceful routine made her jump. Heavy boots stomped across the linoleum floor, followed by a gruff voice that made her shoulders tense. "Where's the doc?" Hank Doolin's commanding tone echoed through the hallway. Callista stepped out of the recovery ward, immediately spotting the cardboard box clutched in his weathered hands. Quiet whimpers emerged from inside. "Mr. Doolin," she said, maintaining her professional composure. "What brings you in this morning?" He thrust the box toward her. "Got a litter here. Mother rejected 'em." Inside, 6 German shepherd puppies huddled together, their tiny bodies trembling. But it was the smallest one that caught her eye. A fragile scrap of life barely bigger than her palm, its dark coat dull and lifeless. "This one's done for," Hank said, pointing at the runt. "Best put it down now and save everyone the trouble." Callista's heart clenched as she lifted the tiny pup. Its body was cold, much too cold, and its breathing came in shallow gasps. But beneath her gentle touch, she felt the faintest flutter of a heartbeat, a tiny spark of determination to live. "No," she said firmly, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. "I won't put down a puppy that's still fighting." Hank's face darkened. "Ain't worth the effort or expense, just a runt." "Every life has value, Mr. Doolin." Callista cradled the puppy close, trying to share her body warmth. "I'll take personal responsibility for this one." Looking at the tiny fighter in her hands, she added softly, "I'm calling him Valor." As she examined the other puppies, her trained eye caught details that set off warning bells. Beneath their fur, several showed unusual bruising. Their bodies felt too thin, their bones too prominent for newborns. The mother's milk should have provided better nutrition than this. "Mr. Doolin, these puppies show signs of malnourishment. Has their mother been eating properly? And these bruises—" "Ain't nothing wrong with my breeding operation," he snapped, cutting her off. "Been doing this 30 years. Don't need some young vet telling me my business." The door to the back office opened, and Dr. James Parker, the clinic owner, stepped out. His eyes darted between Callista and Hank, reading the tension in the air. "Everything all right out here?" he asked carefully. "Your new vet's got some interesting ideas about my dogs," Hank said, his voice carrying a clear warning. Dr. Parker pulled Callista aside while a tech began processing Hank's paperwork. "Listen, Callista," he whispered. "Hank Doolin accounts for 20% of our business. His breeding operation supplies dogs across 3 states. We can't afford to antagonize him. But if he's neglecting, without proof, it's his word against yours. And in this county, his word carries a lot of weight." He glanced at the tiny puppy in her arms. "If you want to waste your time trying to save the runt, that's your choice. But drop the other questions, please." Callista looked down at Valor, so small and vulnerable. His little body shuddered with each breath, but somehow she could sense his will to survive. In that moment, she made her choice. "I understand," she told Dr. Parker, but in her heart, she knew she couldn't simply look away. Something was wrong at Hank's breeding facility, and this fragile puppy in her arms was just the visible piece of a larger puzzle. She carried Valor to the treatment area, gathering supplies to warm him and start him on fluids. "You and me, little one," she whispered, gently rubbing his tiny chest. "We're going to prove them all wrong." From the front desk, she heard Hank's parting shot. "Remember what I said, Doc. Some things are better left alone." But as Valor's tiny paw curled around her finger, Callista knew she'd made the right choice. Whatever consequences came from defying Hank Doolin, she would face them. For now, though, her focus was on the precious life in her hands, a puppy who needed her and who had already taught her that sometimes doing the right thing meant standing your ground, no matter how powerful the opposition. For 3 straight days, Callista barely left Valor's side. She set up a makeshift bed next to his incubator, catching quick naps between his 2-hour feeding schedule. The tiny puppy needed constant care, warming, feeding, monitoring, and she was determined to give him every chance at survival. "Come on, little fighter," she whispered, carefully feeding him with a syringe. Each drop of formula was a victory, each steady breath a miracle. Valor was so small that even the smallest puppy bottle was too big for his mouth. Instead, she had to feed him drops at a time, watching anxiously as he struggled to swallow. The clinic staff tiptoed around her dedication, some shaking their heads at what they saw as a futile effort. But Callista noticed how the overnight technician, Maria, would quietly leave fresh coffee by her side, or how Dr. Parker turned a blind eye to her sleeping in the clinic. On the 4th morning, while checking the other puppies from Hank's litter, she noticed signs of infection in their umbilical sites. They needed antibiotics, medication she'd have to get from Hank's farm since they were still technically his dogs. The drive out to Doolin's breeding facility took her through winding back roads. Fall colors painted the Montana landscape in fierce oranges and reds, but Callista barely noticed the beauty. Her mind was too focused on what she might find at the farm. Hank's property came into view, a sprawling operation with multiple kennels and outbuildings. The main house needed paint, and rusty farm equipment dotted the yard. As she parked her truck, the hair on the back of her neck stood up. Something felt off about this place. She found Hank by the main kennel, filling water bowls. His expression soured when he saw her. "What now?" he demanded, straightening up. "The puppies need antibiotics for their umbilical sites," Callista explained, keeping her voice professional. "I need your approval since they're still under your care." "That runt still hanging on?" Hank asked, ignoring her request. "Valor is fighting hard," she replied firmly. "About those antibiotics." "Fine." Hank cut her off. "Paperwork's in the office. Follow me." As they walked across the yard, a sound caught Callista's attention. Muffled barking coming from a metal shed near the back of the property. The barking had a desperate quality that made her stomach twist. "What's in that building?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Hank's face hardened. "Storage, equipment and such." He stepped closer, his bulk suddenly intimidating. "Ain't nothing back there that concerns you, Doc." But the barking came again, followed by what sounded like scratching against metal. Those weren't the sounds of equipment. "Mr. Doolin, as a licensed veterinarian, if you have animals in distress, you finish that sentence." Hank interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "And you might find yourself dealing with some distress of your own." He leaned in close enough that she could smell stale coffee on his breath. "This is my property, my business. Best you remember that." Callista's heart hammered in her chest, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. After what felt like forever, he turned away. "Come get your paperwork," he growled, "then get off my land." She followed him to the office, her mind racing. Those were definitely dog sounds coming from that shed. But without proof or a warrant, there was nothing she could do. Yet. The drive home felt longer than usual. The sun had set by the time she pulled into her driveway, casting long shadows across her small ranch house. As she gathered her bag and clinic papers, headlights caught her attention. A dark pickup truck idled at the end of her driveway, its engine rumbling in the quiet evening. The headlights were off, but she could see the orange glow of a cigarette inside the cab. Callista stood frozen by her car, keys clutched tight in her hand. After what seemed like an eternity, the truck's engine revved and it pulled away, disappearing down the dark road. But the message was clear. She was being watched. Inside her house, Callista double-checked all the locks before sinking onto her couch. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone, starting a new note. She documented everything she'd seen and heard at Hank's farm, including the mysterious truck. Her veterinary instincts told her something was terribly wrong at that breeding facility. The barking from that shed haunted her. What was Hank hiding? But first she had to get back to Vala. The tiny puppy needed her, and somehow she knew that saving him was just the beginning of a much bigger fight. She gathered her things, ready to return to the clinic for another night of around-the-clock care. Whatever Hank Doolin was hiding, whatever threats he made, she wouldn't look the other way. After another sleepless night watching over Vala, Callista sat in her office, staring at her phone. The mysterious truck hadn't appeared again, but Hank's threats echoed in her mind. She needed help, someone who understood both animals and the law. Her thoughts turned to Nathan Berwick. She hadn't spoken to her old college friend in months, but she knew he now worked as a wildlife enforcement officer in the area. With trembling fingers, she dialed his number. "Nathan? It's Callista Monroe. I need your help." 20 minutes later, they sat in a quiet corner of the local diner. Nathan looked exactly as she remembered, rugged and steady, with kind eyes that missed nothing. She told him everything: the puppy's condition, the locked shed, the threatening truck. "That doesn't sound like normal breeding practices," Nathan said, stirring his coffee. His forehead creased with concern. "Those injuries you described, classic signs of overcrowding and neglect." "I know something's wrong there, Nathan. Those sounds from the shed." Callista shuddered. "But I'm just a clinic vet. I don't know what to do." Nathan leaned forward. "We can file a formal investigation request, but honestly, that could take weeks, even months. The system's backed up, and Hank's got friends in the county office." "The animals might not have weeks," Callista said, her voice cracking. "Vala barely made it through last night." "How's the little guy doing?" Callista shook her head. "Not good. His breathing's getting worse. I've tried everything in our standard protocols, but..." She stopped, an idea forming. "But what?" "We just got this new oxygen therapy chamber. It's meant for kittens, still in the testing phase. But maybe..." "Sounds risky," Nathan warned. "Could lose your license if something goes wrong. I could lose Vala if I don't try." Callista straightened her shoulders. "I have to do something." Nathan studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, here's what we'll do. You focus on keeping that puppy alive. I'll start quietly asking around about Hank's operation. No official investigation yet, but I've got contacts who might know something." Relief flooded through Callista. "Thank you, Nathan. I was starting to feel crazy, like maybe I was imagining things." "Trust your instincts," he said firmly. "They're usually right." Back at the clinic, Callista worked quickly to set up the oxygen chamber. It was a clear plastic box with sophisticated monitoring equipment, cutting-edge technology that hadn't even been approved for regular use yet. She carefully adjusted the settings, her heart racing as she placed Vala inside. "Please work," she whispered, watching his tiny chest rise and fall. "Please fight." The bell above the clinic door chimed. Callista's stomach dropped when she saw Hank Doolin's bulky frame fill the doorway. "Heard you've been asking questions about my property," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. He glanced at the oxygen chamber. "That's mighty expensive equipment for a worthless runt." "Every animal deserves care, Mr. Doolin," Callista replied, stepping between him and Vala. "And as their vet, it's my job to ensure they're getting it." Hank moved closer, towering over her. "Seems to me you're poking around where you don't belong, Doc. Might want to think real careful about that." Small-town vets don't last long without community support. Be a shame if folks started taking their business elsewhere. Is that a threat? Just friendly advice. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Some doors are best left closed. Remember that. After he left, Callista sank into her chair, hands shaking. But when she looked at Valor in his chamber, his tiny form finally breathing easier in the enriched oxygen, her resolve strengthened. The experimental treatment was working. His color was better, his vitals stronger. She pulled out her phone and texted Nathan. Hank just visited. Definitely hiding something. Valor improving with new treatment. What's our next move? His response came quickly. Document everything. Save security footage. I'm working on something. Be careful. Callista looked at Valor, then at the door where Hank had stood. She was in deep now, but there was no turning back. Whatever Hank was hiding in that shed, whatever threats he made, she had to see this through. For Valor, and for all the other animals who needed help. She settled in for another long night, watching the monitors and taking detailed notes. The oxygen chamber hummed softly, and inside, Valor slept peacefully for the first time since she'd met him. One small victory, she thought. But somehow she knew the real fight was just beginning. The clock struck 11:30 when Callista pulled into the clinic's parking lot. Her headlights swept across the building's front, revealing nothing unusual. She'd left Valor just 2 hours ago to grab dinner and fresh clothes, confident the oxygen chamber would keep him stable. The moment she unlocked the front door, her heart stopped. Glass crunched under her shoes. In the dim light from the street lamp outside, she could make out scattered supplies across the floor, syringes, bandages, and medication bottles strewn everywhere. No, 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 she whispered, fumbling for the light switch with trembling fingers. The fluorescent lights flickered on, revealing the full extent of the destruction. Her treatment room looked like a tornado had torn through it. Cabinet doors hung open, their contents dumped onto the floor. But worst of all was the oxygen chamber, or what remained of it. The sophisticated equipment lay in pieces, its clear walls shattered, monitoring devices ripped apart. Valor's weak whimper came from behind an overturned exam table. She rushed over, finding him huddled in his blanket, shivering but alive. Someone had pulled him from the chamber before destroying it. "I've got you, sweet boy," she murmured, scooping him up. His breathing was already becoming labored without the supplemental oxygen. She needed to think fast. A piece of paper on the counter caught her eye. Written in harsh black letters were 2 words. "Drop it." Callista's hands shook as she pulled out her phone, hitting Nathan's speed dial while cradling Valor against her chest. "They destroyed everything," she said as soon as he answered. "The oxygen chamber, it's gone. Valor needs help now." "I'm on my way," Nathan replied instantly. "Have you called the police?" "Not yet. I need to stabilize him first." Her mind raced through options. "My car. I have an idea." Still holding Valor, she grabbed what supplies she could salvage. Blankets, her portable air pump used for inflating pet beds, and her medical bag. Her hands were steady now, emergency training kicking in despite her fear. In her car, she turned the engine on and maxed out the seat warmers. Working quickly, she created a nest in the passenger seat using the blankets, forming a small contained space. The air pump, usually meant for inflating dog beds during house calls, became a makeshift oxygen concentrator. "Stay with me, buddy," she whispered, positioning the pump near Valor's face. The warm air from the seat heaters rose through the blankets, creating a crude but functional incubator. She monitored his breathing, watching his chest rise and fall in the dim car light. Headlights swept across the parking lot. Nathan's truck pulled up, and he jumped out, face tight with anger. He took one look at Callista working in her car and pulled out his phone, snapping pictures of the note and destruction inside. "This is criminal harassment," he said, jaw clenched. "They've crossed a line." "It has to be Hank," Callista said, adjusting the air pump. "This happened right after he threatened me." Nathan crouched beside the car door, checking Valor's makeshift setup. Smart thinking with this. How's he doing? Stable, for now. But without proper oxygen therapy. She couldn't finish the sentence. I've got some news, Nathan said, standing up straight. Was going to tell you tomorrow, but now it can't wait. My contact at the county office found something interesting. Multiple complaints about Hank's property over the years all mysteriously disappeared from the system. Disappeared? Buried? But my friend kept copies. Nathan's eyes hardened. And that's not all. There's a pattern of suspicious fires at his previous properties in other counties. Insurance paid out each time. Callista looked down at Valor, then at the destroyed clinic. He's not just neglecting animals, is he? This is something bigger. Much bigger. And now we have proof he's trying to intimidate a witness. Nathan pulled out his phone again. I'm calling in some favors. We're getting a warrant first thing tomorrow morning. Valor might not have until tomorrow, Callista said softly, watching the puppy's labored breathing. Then we document everything tonight. Photos, statements, security footage if you have it. Build our case while we monitor him. Nathan squeezed her shoulder. You're not in this alone anymore, Callista. We'll save him, and we'll stop Hank. They spent the next hour photographing the damage and taking inventory of destroyed supplies. Callista kept checking Valor every few minutes, adjusting his makeshift incubator setup. The seat warmers and air pump weren't ideal, but they were keeping him stable. As they worked, Nathan's phone buzzed with messages from his contacts. Each response strengthened their case against Hank, building a picture of corruption and cruelty that went far beyond one puppy. It's going to be a long night, Nathan said, watching Callista check Valor's vital signs again. But we're not backing down, not now. Callista nodded, gently stroking Valor's tiny head. Her improvised solution was working for now, but she knew they were racing against time. The destroyed oxygen chamber had made the danger real and immediate. Whatever Hank was hiding, he'd shown he would stop at nothing to keep it secret. Nathan paced the clinic's small break room, his phone pressed to his ear, while Callista monitored Valor in her makeshift car incubator. Through the window, she could see the first hints of dawn breaking over the Montana mountains. They'd been up all night, gathering evidence and making calls. When Nathan finally hung up, his face was grim. He sat down heavily across from Callista, running a hand through his disheveled hair. It's worse than we thought, he said, pulling out his tablet. Much worse. My contacts just sent over files from 3 different states. He slid the tablet across the table, showing Callista a series of reports and photographs. Hank's not just breeding dogs carelessly, he's running an interstate trafficking operation. Callista leaned forward, her exhausted eyes widening as she scrolled through the documents. These sale records, the puppies are all way too young to be separated from their mothers. Exactly, he's selling them at 4 weeks old, sometimes younger. The buyers don't know they're getting sick puppies until it's too late. Nathan's jaw clenched. But here's where it gets even more interesting. See that German Shepherd in the corner of this security photo? Callista squinted at the grainy image taken outside Hank's shed. Even in the poor quality photo, she could make out the distinctive markings on the dog's face. Wait, that looks like Kaiser, a police K9 that went missing from the billings department 3 months ago. Nathan pulled up another file. Worth over $20,000 in training alone. We think Hank stole him for breeding. The bruises I saw on Valor and the other puppies, Callista said, realization dawning. They weren't from rough handling, were they? Nathan shook his head. Kaiser was probably trying to protect them. A trained police dog wouldn't let someone mishandle puppies without putting up a fight. Callista felt sick to her stomach. She glanced out at her car where Valor lay fighting for his life. All this time I thought we were just dealing with neglect, but this... She gestured at the files. This is organized crime. That's why he's been so aggressive about keeping you away, Nathan explained. One vet report about the puppy's condition could unravel his whole operation. He's got buyers lined up across state lines, paying premium prices for what they think are healthy purebreds. But without the oxygen chamber. Callista's voice trailed off. Valor's not the only one at risk anymore, Nathan said gently. Every day Hank operates, more puppies are being taken from their mothers too soon. More families are buying sick dogs, and Kaiser's still trapped in that shed. Callista stood up abruptly, anger replacing her exhaustion. So why aren't we shutting him down right now? We have evidence. It's not that simple. Nathan rubbed his temples. Everything we have is circumstantial. The sale records are through shell companies. The security photo is too blurry for a positive ID on Kaiser. And Hank's got friends in local government. That's how those previous complaints disappeared. So what do we need? We need to catch him in the act, document the conditions inside that shed, get clear photos of Kaiser and the breeding operation, prove the puppies are being shipped across state lines. Nathan leaned forward. But it has to be done legally, with a warrant, or he'll walk away again. Callista sank back into a chair, the weight of the situation settling over her. What had started as one tiny puppy fighting for survival had exploded into something far bigger. She thought about all the other Valors out there, torn from their mothers, sold to unsuspecting families. And somewhere in that shed, a loyal police dog was being used to create more victims. How long for the warrant? She asked. My contact at the judge's office says tomorrow morning at the earliest. Nathan checked his watch. But Hank doesn't know that, and now that we understand what we're dealing with, we can be better prepared. Callista nodded slowly, her determination building. So we document everything, every puppy that comes through here, every conversation, every threat, and we keep Valor alive to testify to what these dogs go through. Exactly. Nathan gathered up the files, his expression serious. But Callista, this is going to get more dangerous. Hank's not just protecting his reputation anymore, he's protecting a criminal enterprise. The threats might escalate. I'm not backing down, she said firmly. Not now that I know the truth. Those animals need someone to fight for them. Through the window, she could see Valor stirring in his blanket nest, tiny chest rising and falling with each precious breath. He wasn't just one sick puppy anymore. He was proof of a system of cruelty that had gone unchecked for too long. Every hour they kept him alive was another hour closer to exposing the truth. Nathan watched her for a moment, then nodded. All right, let's get to work. We've got less than 24 hours to build an airtight case. Back at Callista's barn, Nathan carefully taped another tiny microphone behind a worn wooden beam. The late afternoon sun streamed through the dusty windows, catching motes of hay in its golden light. Callista watched him work while cradling Valor in a soft blanket against her chest. These recordings have to be perfect, Nathan explained, testing the microphone's connection on his phone. One dropped signal, one muffled conversation, and we lose our chance to nail him. Callista nodded, gently stroking Valor's head. The puppy felt warmer today, more alert. For the first time since she'd met him, his tiny tail had wagged during his morning feeding. I still can't believe we're really doing this. Having second thoughts, Nathan climbed down from the ladder, brushing dust from his jeans. No, she said firmly. Just wondering how I went from treating cattle and house pets to helping set up a sting operation. Nathan pulled out a small camera, expertly concealing it inside an empty feed bag on a high shelf. Sometimes doing the right thing takes us down unexpected paths. You sure you're okay being the buyer? I could call in another officer. Callista shifted Valor to her other arm, watching as he blinked sleepily. It has to be me. Hank's already suspicious of outsiders, but he knows I work with other breeders through the clinic. He might actually believe I'm looking to expand into breeding myself. All right, let's go over the plan again. Nathan moved to the barn's center, gesturing around them. You'll meet him here tomorrow at 9 in the morning. My team will be stationed in the woods behind the barn and in the old storage shed next door. The moment he shows you Kaiser or admits to shipping puppies across state lines, we move in. And the recovery team? They'll be 5 minutes out, ready with transport cages and medical supplies. Nathan's expression softened as he looked at Valor. How's our star witness doing? Callista smiled, the first real smile in days. Better. His breathing's stronger, and he's actually fighting the medicine dropper now instead of just letting me feed him. Watch this. She set him down on a clean blanket spread across a hay bale. Valor wobbled for a moment, then took 2 shaky steps forward before plopping down. "Would you look at that?" Nathan said warmly. "Guess he's living up to his name, after all." They spent the next hour preparing the barn, creating hidden nooks for the rescue team, and ensuring clear paths to all exits. Nathan showed Callista how to wear the wire, where to position herself for the best audio, and what key phrases to listen for. "The most important thing," he stressed, "is keeping yourself safe. If anything feels wrong, if he seems to suspect something, you give the signal and we shut it down immediately." Callista secured a fresh blanket in the emergency crate where Valor would stay during the operation. "I've known men like Hank my whole life. They think they're untouchable because they've gotten away with things for so long. That makes them careless." "Maybe," Nathan admitted, "but it also makes them dangerous when cornered." He paused, watching her arrange medical supplies near the crate. "You know, when you called me about a sick puppy, I never expected it would lead to breaking up an interstate trafficking ring." "Me neither." Callista picked up Valor again, drawing comfort from his warm weight. But looking back, all the signs were there. The mysterious injuries, the 2 young puppies, the locked shed. I just couldn't put it together until now. Nathan checked his phone, reviewing messages from his team. "Equipment test is good. Backup teams are briefed. Now we just need to get through the next 18 hours without tipping our hand." Callista walked to the barn door, looking out over her small property as the sun began to set. The familiar view of rolling pastures and distant mountains felt different now, charged with anticipation and a hint of fear. Tomorrow, this peaceful scene would become the stage for confronting a criminal who'd caused so much suffering. "I should get Valor back to his incubator," she said finally. "He'll need his strength for tomorrow too." As if understanding, the puppy lifted his head and gave a tiny lick to her chin. Nathan smiled at the gesture. "Looks like someone's got your back." They did one final walk-through of the barn, checking every hiding spot and escape route. The gravity of what they were attempting settled over them like the evening shadows creeping across the floor. "Remember," Nathan said as they locked up, "stick to the script. Let him do most of the talking. And if anything feels off, give the signal." Callista finished. "I know. But we have to make this work, Nathan. Not just for Valor, but for all of them." She looked down at the puppy sleeping trustingly in her arms, his tiny body finally showing signs of the fighter within. Tomorrow would change everything, for better or worse. But for now, she had a night of preparation ahead, and a little patient who needed her complete attention. The night air crackled with tension as Callista watched headlights sweep across her barn's weathered walls. Her heart pounded as Hank's truck rumbled up the gravel driveway, right on time at 9 o'clock. She touched the wire beneath her flannel shirt for reassurance, knowing Nathan and his team were hidden just yards away. The truck's engine cut off, leaving an eerie silence broken only by the muffled sounds of whimpering dogs. Hank stepped out, boots crunching on gravel, his broad frame casting a long shadow in the barn's exterior lights. "Evening, Doc," he called out, his usual gruff tone carrying a hint of wariness. "Brought what we discussed." Callista stepped forward, forcing her hands to remain steady. "Let's see them then." Hank moved to the truck's covered bed, pulling back a heavy tarp. The sight made her stomach turn. At least 10 puppies crammed into travel crates meant for half that number. In a larger cage at the back, a magnificent German Shepherd, Kaiser, the stolen police K9, watched with intelligent eyes. "Fine specimens," Hank said, patting the truck's side. "Worth every penny of what we discussed." Callista moved closer, playing her role. "They seem young, very young." She kept her voice level, professional. "How soon can you arrange transport across state lines?" "Got a guy who handles that," Hank replied, relaxing slightly. Can have them wherever you want in 48 hours. Cash only, of course. And I assume we understand each other about keeping things quiet. Of course. Callista reached out as if to examine one of the puppies. And Kaiser here. You're certain about his breeding potential? Hank's expression darkened for a moment. That one's special stock. Premium price, like I said. Already proven with multiple litters. And you can guarantee papers for all of them? Clean documentation, always. Hank pulled out a folder. Got everything right here. $25,000 gets you the whole lot, papers included. The code phrase had been spoken. Callista took 2 steps back. Actually, what you've got here is evidence. The change was instant. Hank's face contorted with rage, just as shouts erupted from every direction. Police! Don't move! Nathan's team converged on the barn, weapons drawn. Hank lunged for his truck, but 2 officers tackled him before he could reach the door. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut mixed with his stream of curses and threats. "Dr. Monroe!" he spat, struggling against the restraints. "You're going to regret this. You have no idea who you're dealing with." Nathan emerged from the shadows, badge gleaming. "She knows exactly who she's dealing with, Hank. And we've got every word of your interstate trafficking operation recorded." More vehicles arrived. Animal control vans and a mobile veterinary unit. Callista pushed aside her shaking hands and focused on the animals. One by one, they freed the puppies from their cramped cages. Kaiser, the stolen canine, allowed her to check him over, his tail wagging as if he knew rescue had finally come. "Multiple cases of mange, dehydration, malnutrition," she reported to the rescue team. "They'll need immediate medical attention, but they should recover." As Hank was led away to a waiting patrol car, Nathan joined Callista by the truck. "You did good," he said softly. "Really good. We found 3 more dogs in that shed of his, plus evidence linking him to illegal breeding operations in 4 states." Callista watched the last puppy being loaded into a warm transport van. Will they be okay? They're headed to the best rehabilitation center in the state, and Kaiser's original department has already been notified. They're sending someone to pick him up tomorrow. The cleanup continued into the early morning hours. Callista gave statements, filled out medical reports, and helped coordinate care plans for each animal. When the last vehicle finally pulled away, she found herself alone in the quiet barn with Nathan. "You should get some rest," he said, touching her shoulder gently. "It's been a long night. I need to check on Valor first." They drove to the clinic together, the adrenaline of the night slowly fading into bone-deep exhaustion. In the treatment room, Callista approached the makeshift incubator where Valor lay sleeping. As she reached in to check his temperature, something magical happened. His eyes opened, really opened, for the first time since his birth. "Nathan," she whispered, "look." They watched in wonder as Valor's dark eyes focused on Callista's face. His tiny tail thumped against the blanket, and he made a soft sound that might have been an attempt at a bark. "Well, would you look at that?" Nathan said, smiling. Seems like he waited for the perfect moment. Callista gently lifted Valor, cradling him close. The puppy nuzzled into her hand, his eyes staying open, alert and bright. After everything, the threats, the danger, the uncertainty, this small miracle felt like the biggest victory of all. "Welcome to the world, little fighter," she murmured. "The real world, where you're safe now." The relief of the successful raid lasted less than 24 hours. Callista and Nathan were working late in her barn, tending to 3 of the rescued puppies too weak for immediate transport, when headlights swept across the windows. The clock on the wall read 11:35. "Expecting anyone?" Nathan asked, straightening up from where he'd been checking a puppy's bandaged paw. Callista shook her head, moving to peer through a gap in the barn doors. A mud-splattered pickup truck she didn't recognize had parked at an angle, blocking the main exit. Heavy boots crunched on gravel. "Get back," Nathan whispered, pulling her away from the doors. "Something's not right." The doors burst open with a bang that made the puppies whimper. A man stormed in, tall and broad like Hank, with the same cold eyes and weather-beaten face. Callista's stomach dropped. She'd seen his picture in Hank's file, Marcus Doolin, the younger brother with his own record of violent offenses. "Where are they?" Marcus demanded, his voice a rough growl. "Where are my brother's dogs?" Nathan stepped forward, positioning himself between Marcus and Callista. "The animals are evidence in an ongoing investigation. You need to leave." "Like hell I do." Marcus's hands clenched into fists. "My brother just posted bail, and he wants his property back. All of it." Callista's mind raced. The tranquilizer gun she used for large animal procedures was in her medical bag, just a few feet away. But Marcus blocked the path. "Those animals were being abused," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "They're under police protection now." Marcus took a menacing step forward. "Last chance. Hand them over, or things get ugly." "That's not happening," Nathan said firmly. "Leave now, or I'm calling this in." Everything happened in a blur. Marcus lunged, swinging a heavy fist at Nathan's head. Nathan managed to deflect the worst of it, but caught a glancing blow to his temple that sent him staggering. Blood trickled down the side of his face. "Nathan!" Callista cried out. Marcus turned toward her, his eyes wild with rage. "You ruined everything," he snarled. "Years of business destroyed because you couldn't mind your own affairs." He advanced on her, backing her against the wall. The puppies were crying now, their frightened yelps filling the barn. Nathan tried to get up but stumbled, clearly dazed from the hit. In that moment, Callista's fear transformed into something else, a fierce, protective anger. These animals had suffered enough. She wouldn't let them be hurt again. While Marcus was focused on her, she slid sideways along the wall, closer to her medical bag. "Your brother broke the law," she said, keeping his attention. "He hurt innocent animals for profit." "Shut up." Marcus swung at her, but she ducked, dropping to her knees beside the bag. Her fingers closed around the tranquilizer gun. Marcus realized what she was doing a second too late. He lunged just as she brought the gun up, muscle memory from years of treating large animals taking over. The dart found its mark in his shoulder. "You little—" He managed 2 more steps before the fast-acting sedative took effect. His knees buckled, and he crashed to the barn floor. Callista scrambled to Nathan's side, examining the wound on his temple. "Hold still," she ordered, pulling gauze from her bag. "That's going to need stitches." "I'm okay," he insisted, though he winced as she pressed the gauze against the cut. "But we need to call this in, now." She was already dialing 911 with shaking hands, keeping one eye on Marcus's unconscious form. Within minutes, sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. "The dose I gave him will keep him out for at least an hour," she told the first officers on scene. "It's the same solution I use for aggressive stallions." As Marcus was loaded into an ambulance and Nathan's head wound was properly treated, Callista checked on the puppies. Despite the chaos, they were unharmed, huddled together in their warm bedding. She gathered them close, feeling their tiny hearts racing against her palms. "You're safe," she whispered. "I promise no one's going to hurt you ever again." A deputy approached, notepad in hand. "Dr. Monroe, we'll need your statement about what happened here tonight." She nodded, still cradling the puppies. "Of course, whatever you need." Nathan appeared at her side, his temple now properly bandaged. "I'll stay with you," he said softly, "until we're sure they're all secure." The night stretched on as statements were taken and evidence photographed. New charges would be filed: assault, attempted theft of evidence, threatening a witness. The puppies eventually settled down, drifting off to sleep under Callista's watchful eye. Dawn was breaking when the last police car pulled away. The barn was quiet once more, save for the gentle breathing of sleeping puppies and the distant chirping of early birds. "That was a hell of a shot with the tranquilizer," Nathan said, breaking the silence. "I had a lot of practice in vet school." Callista replied, though usually on horses, not angry criminals. 3 days after the barn incident, Callista visited Nathan at St. Mary's Hospital. He sat propped up against white pillows, a thick bandage wrapped around his head where the doctors had put in 12 stitches. Despite the injury, his eyes were alert and focused as she entered the room. "You look better," she said, setting a paper cup of coffee on his bedside table. "How's the head?" "Doctor says no permanent damage," Nathan replied, reaching for the coffee. "Though I might have a pretty impressive scar to show for it." Callista settled into the visitor's chair, clutching her own cup. "The district attorney called this morning. They want me to testify against both brothers." Nathan nodded carefully. "You okay with that?" "I have to be." She stared into her coffee, watching the steam rise. "The DA says my testimony could make or break the case. I'm the one who saw the conditions firsthand, documented the injuries, treated the animals." "It won't be easy," Nathan warned. "Defense lawyers can be brutal, especially with expert witnesses. They'll try to tear apart your credibility." "I know." Callista's hands tightened around her cup. "But those animals suffered for years in Hank's breeding operation. If I don't speak up for them, who will?" The trial began 2 weeks later at the county courthouse. Callista sat rigid in the witness chair, facing a packed courtroom. Hank and Marcus Doolin sat at the defense table, both in suits that couldn't quite hide their threatening presence. Their expensive lawyer stood to begin cross-examination. "Dr. Monroe," he started, voice smooth as oil. "Isn't it true that you became emotionally invested in one particular puppy from Mr. Doolin's breeding program?" "I became invested in saving its life," Callista replied steadily, "as any veterinarian would." "And this emotional attachment didn't cloud your professional judgment?" My concerns were based on medical evidence. The puppies showed signs of severe neglect, malnutrition, untreated infections, improper weaning. I documented everything in their charts. The lawyer paced before the jury. "Yet you took no action for weeks after first noticing these supposed issues. Why wait if things were so dire?" Callista met his gaze. "I followed proper channels. I documented the injuries, reported my concerns to authorities, and gathered evidence legally. The delay wasn't from lack of caring. It was from doing things right." Hour after hour, the questions continued. The lawyer tried to paint her as overzealous, unprofessional, driven by emotion rather than facts. But Callista held firm, referring back to her detailed medical records and photographs that showed the true scope of the brothers' operation. She described finding the stolen police K9, explaining how DNA tests proved it was the missing dog. She walked the jury through the pattern of injuries she'd documented, consistent with dogs being bred too frequently and puppies taken from mothers too soon. Her voice remained steady as she detailed the night Marcus attacked, though her hands shook slightly at the memory. During a brief recess, the district attorney touched her arm. "You're doing great. The jury's with you. They can see you're telling the truth." Callista nodded, exhausted but determined. Through the courthouse windows, she could see Nathan waiting outside, still sporting a bandage on his temple. His presence gave her strength. Back on the stand, she faced the final round of questions. The defense lawyer's tone grew increasingly aggressive. "Dr. Monroe, isn't it possible you simply misinterpreted normal breeding practices? After all, Mr. Doolin has been in this business for 20 years. "No," she said firmly. "There's nothing normal about what I saw. Those animals were treated like inventory, not living creatures. They were denied basic veterinary care, proper nutrition, and humane living conditions. Experience doesn't justify cruelty." She gestured to the photos displayed for the jury, the overcrowded shed, the injured mothers, the sickly puppies. "The evidence speaks for itself. These animals suffered needlessly for profit." When she finally stepped down from the witness stand, her legs felt wobbly. But she held her head high, refusing to break eye contact with either brother as she passed the defense table. In the gallery, she saw several jurors wiping away tears. The wait for the verdict was excruciating. Callista spent it at the clinic, focusing on her patients, including Vala, who grew stronger every day. The tiny puppy who had started it all now wagged his tail when she approached, eyes bright and trusting. "Whatever happens," she told him one evening, scratching behind his ears, "you're safe now. That's what matters most." But as she sat there, surrounded by the animals in her care, she knew it wasn't just about Valor anymore. It was about every dog trapped in that operation, every animal suffering in silence. The truth had to come out, no matter the personal cost. The jury would deliver their verdict tomorrow. Callista had done everything she could to ensure justice would be served. Now she could only wait, hoping the evidence she helped gather would be enough to stop the Doolin brothers from ever harming another animal. The courthouse erupted in applause as the judge read out the sentences. 8 years for Hank Doolin, 6 for his brother Marcus, the maximum penalties for animal cruelty and running an illegal breeding operation. Callista sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face as relief washed over her. Nathan, his head now bandage-free but sporting a visible scar, squeezed her hand. "You did it," he whispered. "We did it," she corrected, thinking of everyone who had helped bring the truth to light. The district attorney approached them after the proceedings. "The rescue organizations are ready to take in the remaining dogs from evidence," she explained. "They'll all find good homes." Callista nodded, but her mind was already at the clinic, where Valor waited. After 3 months of intensive care, countless sleepless nights, and more than a few miracles, he had finally reached normal puppy weight. His latest tests showed a strong heart and healthy lungs, a far cry from the barely breathing newborn she'd first held in her hands. That evening, Callista completed the adoption paperwork, making official what her heart had known since that first day. Valor was hers, and she was his. As she signed the final form, her boss appeared in the doorway. "I was wrong to warn you off," he admitted. "Sometimes doing the right thing means taking risks. You taught me that." The next morning dawned crystal clear, the Montana winter painting her 5 acres in pristine white. Callista stood on her back porch, watching as Valor explored his new home. No longer did he need the special warming blankets or supplemental oxygen. His dark coat gleamed with health, and his once oversized ears now fit his growing frame perfectly. "Go on, boy," she encouraged, and Valor took off across the yard. He bounded through the snow, sending up sparkling clouds with each leap. His confidence showed in every movement. This was not the fragile runt who had once fit in her palm, but a strong, spirited young dog coming into his own. He circled back to her, tail wagging, eyes bright with joy. Callista knelt in the snow, wrapping her arms around him as he covered her face with enthusiastic kisses. "Look how far we've come," she whispered against his fur. In that moment, watching Valor run free under the wide Montana sky, Callista felt the quiet triumph of their shared journey. They had both been underestimated, she as the young vet who dared to challenge the powerful Doolin brothers, he as the runt no one thought would survive. But together, they had proven that courage, compassion, and unwavering determination could overcome any odds. Valor barked playfully, inviting her to join his snowy adventure. Laughing, Callista stepped off the porch. They had fought for what mattered most, and they had won. Now it was time to enjoy the life they had saved together. Thank you for watching. Stories like this remind us who we are. If something touched your heart, go ahead and subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow with another story that just might stay with you.